I don't, but,
I don't mind asking.
Good evening.
Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us. We see Dave and Celia.
Yeah, hey guys.
If you want to jump in and let us know in the comment section that you're here and present with us, I should make sure I turn the computer volume down so I don't
Start hearing yourself in a
have
second.
the feedback back there. But we would love to have some dialogue in the stuff that we're doing tonight, and just just let us know. Okay, we have been in Timothy for the last couple of weeks. You were gone last week,
I was gone.
but thankfully you're back. We missed
back
you.
now.
Everybody was ranting about.
When you're gone, we don't have class. When I'm gone, it
Now
proceeds.
listen, I think those days are over, my friend. Okay, because now that we have support with the filming and all this, there was a time
I'm not
when
sure if that's true. Hey, Pam.
we may don't know if it's true that we have support. I mean, I think I'm very
that's not
obvious.
what
They're right there,
The
Rylan.
days
You
are
can
over.
see them.
I don't know if I'm going to fly solo.
Now listen, we should have a little voting poll here about whether you would like for Rylan to fly solo sometime. Actually, I don't know how I would feel about that. That poll might not be.
You don't know what I would say by
Well,
myself with
Sam,
full
might
reign.
get my feelings hurt a little bit if everybody was like, yeah, that'd be much better. we
just
could
not go
really
there.
do with some just Rylan.
But I don't think any response at this point is going to be good for either of us.
Yeah, we're kind of getting ourselves into some trouble here. So anyway, all that to say that we are we've been working through all of Paul's work, Paul's letters, and we're in this section. The last couple of weeks we did 1 Timothy, and we're going to do like one more week where we're going to pick up a couple of these things. And not all of it is as directed in prayer, okay? Like we've allowed ourselves to kind of have that space to pick up some of other pieces of Paul's spirituality. One of the things that we talked about last week was how Paul, in 1 Timothy in particular, Paul wants to connect Christian spirituality with Christian teaching, okay? So the doctrines, the things that we believe about God, the things that we might say about God, are reinforced by the way that we live out our spirituality, and vice versa. If we live out our spirituality appropriately and practices and disciplines of the faith, then we should be reinforced in our beliefs as well, right? Like they help us trust God more and help us understand what it means to relate to God as Father, Spirit, and Son, and all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to pick up today. I say that because we're going to pick up in something today that kind of starts with that. Okay. And that is something that we're going to get at the end of chapter 3. So we're in 1 Timothy chapter 3. And the first part of it, of course, is about like elders and deacons. Okay. But when we come to this section, it kind of like moves us towards thinking about I guess it grounds that in this vision of what we believe, okay? So let's pick up in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 14 and following, and then we're going to we're going to pick up some of the stuff at the beginning of chapter 4 as well, okay? You want to read?
Yeah.
Go for it.
1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 14 through the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope to come to you soon, but I am writing these instructions to you so that, if I am delayed, you may know how one ought to behave in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and bulwark of the truth. Without any doubt, the mystery of our religion is great. He was revealed in flesh, vindicated in spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among Gentiles, believed in throughout the world, taken up in glory.
Okay, so this is this is a really interesting kind of distillation of our faith, right? That Jesus is revealed in flesh, or God, maybe we should say that God, more broadly speaking, is revealed in flesh in Jesus. I think that's really what he's saying there. He was vindicated in spirit, okay, or perhaps we would think the Spirit. Vindicated.
We don't use that word very often.
It's a real shame. It's a shame.
Sometimes we say vindictive. Is that the same?
Yeah, that's not the same.
No. Okay.
Okay. So, how would you construe vindicated?
Justified.
Yeah.
And that's not from the notes in my...
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it's like a thing.
There's like a footnote that says
or
justified. Yeah, that's really great.
And then justified would be like not made right, but like shown to be true, maybe? Like you showing
Yeah.
something is what it says it is?
Yeah, like
or-
proven to be right.
Proven, yeah.
Like,
Okay.
almost like a combination between like validated. I think would
Yeah,
be
validated, okay.
somewhere between validated and justified.
So
I think is a good way of thinking about it.
Why vindicated in spirit? Why not vindicated by the Spirit?
Yeah. Okay. So what I would say now, first of all, those words are very close.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The preposition in can also mean by. Okay. That's
Okay, so
that's like a
is that what
meaning
he's
of
saying?
that. Yeah. I think he's probably saying that because of the Spirit,
Yeah.
he has been vindicated, or like in the Spirit has vindicated. Is probably a good way of thinking about it. It's actually like the important thing about that is that there's like what are there, 5 of these? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so there are 5 ends here, right? He's revealed in spirit, vindicated, or revealed in flesh.
Vindicated in spirit.
I'm going to
Are you about
sneeze
to
at
sneeze?
some point. That's right, not
Isn't
to
that the
sneeze
worst?
into the microphone. Yeah, he's revealed in flesh, vindicated in spirit, seen by angels.
There's 4 ends, and then 1 by and 1 among. Those are prepositions.
Actually, in Greek, it's the same preposition.
For all of them?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
it's-
wow. So they're trying to make it not so repetitive.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
seen
yeah.
in angels doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Well, the scene is not the same. Actually, the scene there is no. Man, this is kind of hard to
Seen
describe.
angelically? Or something
Yeah,
like that?
no, there's no preposition there.
Yeah.
It's-
Seen angels.
Yeah. Well, I say that's not really accurate either, because
Teach us some Greek. Lay it on us.
Okay, so you know how like in some languages, like
The answer is no. We're all ready.
you've got some,
I
learned some
remember- we have a
languages,
little
right?
bit of,
Well, you know, like
Spanish.
how in some languages, like like words can contain more information than just the word itself. Like there might be a masculine and feminine thing for a noun, or there might be
I do know that.
or like a verb might have like the person of the verb, like I, hablo is I speak.
Yeah.
And
Okay, yeah.
you
That's
know,
Spanish.
You can
That's
say
like
yo
Spanish,
hablo, like and
But
emphasize
you can leave
the
yo
I.
out.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you could just say hablo.
Yeah, I remember
okay.
that.
Okay, so like Greek has things like that. So and with nouns, it can contain a little bit something kind of like a preposition. Like it just shows that it's that kind of noun that is like an object of a preposition or something like that. It's probably a good way of saying it in the way that nouns are declined in Greek. It doesn't give you any information about what kind of preposition necessarily would go with that.
Yeah.
Okay, but it means that it's like there's like an instrumental connection between the two words. Is I think the best way.
So
to
what? So this could be any seen blank angels, and you could fill that in with any preposition.
No, I don't know if I would go that way because the prepositions like provide additional information. Okay, and so what I'm saying is there's just no way of expressing this particularly it's like seen, angelically seen. How about we do it that
Yeah.
way? Okay, I think that would be a good way
Yeah.
of expressing
I did
it.
say that earlier.
Did you say you did not say
I said
angelically?
seen angelically. We
Oh, I
should
guess you
rewind.
did
Can we
say that.
rewind?
No, we're not rewind it. You at home,
Can we do a replay?
that'll be in the. That's kind of a downfall of like all this stuff being recorded. Like you say the wrong thing. Like
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I
You
give
could
you
become a
credit. I
meme.
believe that he said it this way.
All right.
Somebody's probably already saying.
Continuing
there.
on.
Wait. Okay, but
Oh, okay.
that's to say that like all of the others like
Are there.
all the
They're all
others are there.
the same
in flesh,
preposition.
in spirit, in.
Proclaimed in Gentiles.
Yes. That word is used for Gentile, but it's also just the nations, okay, or other peoples. Okay.
Got it.
So it's
Proclaimed
actually
in-
ethnic.
in the nations.
Yeah, it's like
So among fits like a little bit better for us.
yeah.
Okay.
In the nations, yeah. In the world and in glory, like all those are. Yeah, yeah. Those are all. It's kind of so there's a poetic. Of course, most translations are going to kind of lay this out differently to indicate that it's poetic, that it's like verses, but it's kind of this poetic doxology of verbs and the in things that they're there, right? In the in categories. And of course, these things are really important, like in flesh, in spirit, in the nations, in the world.
Taken up in glory.
Yeah, in glory.
All right, I know enough
Yeah.
to know that this is really close to a chiasm. A chiasm? Is that what it's called?
It could be, yes.
And the middle one is Gentiles. Is that significant, you think? There's 5 things.
Well, first of all,
right?
let's talk
And they
about
could be
like what a
symmetric.
chiasmic
Yeah.
structure is. Okay, of course, that's based off of the word, the Greek letter chi, which is their
For X.
their
or
X.
kind
Yeah,
of,
right. Yeah,
That's what it looks like.
it looks like an X. Yeah, it's pronounced not that way, but
Yeah.
I usually pronounce like a CH kind of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And the chiasm stuff is, or I should say it's pronounced like a CH, except for now where it's a K. But it has this kind of hard CH sound
Yeah.
to it. And it's shaped like an X, and it's actually the shape of it that makes the chiasm, is the chiasmic thing, right? So you have, it starts somewhere, it leads to a middle point, and then it kind of comes back out. I'm sure there is some element of this that is chiasmatic.
I don't know about that.
I think that's probably right.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
we'll go with it.
That's yeah, I think that's probably right. Actually, it's chiasmatic, that where it has this kind of poetic structure to you. But I don't know that I'm ready to go there. One thing that I might say, well, no, I don't. I just don't know that we can necessarily say that. Now, what's interesting here for us, though, in particular, is that he's connecting this, of course, into the way that we live, right? And he's saying, I'm teaching you all these things about, if we back up to verse 15, I'm showing you all this so that you would know how to behave in the household of God. He says that's the church, which is the church of the living God, okay? Which is a really, it's a really big phrase for the church. Okay, it's the household of God. It's the church of the living God. And then he goes on to say, the NRSV describes this as the pillar and bulwark. Now, you said we don't use the word vindicated very often. I'm going to say we use the word bulwark even less, right?
Probably.
The pillar and bulwark of the faith.
Word in it.
Or of the
The
truth.
mighty bulwark
Yeah,
is our God. And that's the only time I think
a mighty
I've
fortress
ever-
is a God.
A bulwark. Yeah, that's right.
A bulwark never
failing.
failing.
Yeah, that's it.
Failing.
That's
Which was written by who? Martin Luther.
yeah.
Thanks for playing, Rylan. Very good. Do you know last week we sang one of our oldest songs? Did
The
you
Holy,
recognize
Holy,
this? No.
Which one is
Oh, Sacred Head.
Oh.
Which was written, you should know that. This is important, Rylan. It was written by Bernard of Clairvaux in the 12th century.
I did
so
not.
that song goes
I
all
did
the way
not
back to
realize
the
that.
1100s.
I do really
It's
like those
extremely
old songs,
Yeah.
and I picked a bunch of them for
Yeah.
Sunday.
I mean, I am pretty sure that's the oldest song in our hymnals. Anyway, but it doesn't have the word bulwark in it.
No. What about As the Deer? Wouldn't that be older?
Yeah, I mean,
I gotcha. Okay.
without going
Moving
in like
on.
scripture songs directly from scripture.
Sorry. I'm
this-
derailing this conversation.
No.
This is
It's fine.
class.
So it's this foundation of the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, like this pillar, bulwark. I mean, these are like supporting concepts. They're like architectural concepts that deal with how what he says is that the church is the support of the truth. Okay, and then he comes back and says, let's see. I think ours. I think our translation says, "Without any doubt, the mystery of our religion is great," and I think that's a really strange, a really strange translation, and I didn't go to look at what this says in the NIV. Let me pull that up real quick. Surely they've got something better there. No, it says beyond all question. I just find that to be really strange, because what the word actually is it's like confessingly. All right.
I confess.
Yeah, but homologeon, which is the confession, okay, is like a really important word for Christian theology, right? And what he's actually giving here is a confession of the faith. And so, I think it's really strange that he doesn't, the translators don't use that language. Although I think it probably is meant to say that there isn't a question or a doubt, or this should be held as valid, okay?
Yeah.
But if you kind of put all this together, he says, what he's saying is there's a certain way to act in the household of God, connect to, because it's the church of the living God. It's the pillar and bulwark of truth.
Yeah.
There's this foundation of truth. And then the next piece of that is the truth that's kind of contained that we are demonstrating, or that compels us to live a certain way in the household of God, is the revelation of Jesus, who is, revealed in spirit, vindicated or revealed in flesh, vindicated in spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among Gentiles, believed in through the world, and taken up in glory. Like, it's a very Jesus-centered way of living. All right, so we took a long way to get to that.
Yeah.
Okay, we really took the long way home, here. But I think it's critical for us to understand that part of Paul's project in teaching these early Christians how to live is he's trying to help them live in a Jesus-centered way, or live consistently with what Jesus revealed about God. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's important to him, right? Like, the mystery of our faith is the mystery of our religious way of life. It comes from Jesus. It comes from the one who is revealed in flesh and glorified, and we're living out all the things that he has to say to us, even in the nitty-gritty of like what it means to be an elder or a bishop,
Right,
or
yeah.
what it means to be a deacon or a servant of the church. All of that is not just like church administration. It's a living out of like the mystery of faith. Like that, I mean, it's kind of significant that he puts it in this like different sort of, like he's kind of really in the weeds about like, make sure that your elders are like sober-minded people, that they're not conceited, make sure your deacons are are temperate, they manage their household well, right, that they have a good reputation.
So
boldness of
is he
faith.
kind of saying here that like he's writing him this stuff because it's not just like self-explanatory that those things should be true? I mean, it kind of is, but like it's not. I'm trying to figure out what this last part means. So he wants them to know how to behave in the household of God, and then he just describes the household of God, right? It's the church of the living God, the pillar or bulwark of truth.
Yeah.
And then he relates
and not
it
just
to
not just the
Jesus.
pillar. I mean, he says pillar of truth, of the truth.
Yeah.
But it's this is the truth. It's what's revealed about God in Jesus. Right? Like, that's the truth that is being represented by the church. Okay, so the way the church lives is important because of what has been revealed about, in
And
Jesus.
so if you don't live in this way, in this way that is, righteous, then it's going to, it's not going to represent these truths, right?
Yeah. I think that's right.
And this quote, so this poem, this is my last question. This poem, he's not quoting from like the Old Testament or anything. He just made this up.
Yeah, there's nothing. Well, whether he did or whether he's
it's
taking
an
it-
early
yeah,
Christian saying or
in
something.
particular, and by the way, that we might have an indicator there in this like confessedly stuff. So it's very possible to me. I think, and I haven't checked the commentators about this. I would be shocked if there's not other people saying this. Okay,
Right.
like this is not an original deal or intended to be, but when Paul says this is confessedly true, okay, you know, the early church had like their kind of baptismal confessions, right? It had these things that they would say as a part of their worship, as a part of their liturgy with each other, whether that was baptismal liturgy or whether it was something they would say in a hymn as they confess the faith to each other. And this really strikes me as something that would be. You can really imagine it, right?
Yes.
Like you can imagine the church reciting, dot 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 dot.
Yeah.
I think that would be, and I think that would make sense about why it shows up in here, right? Like he's saying, he's trying to connect all this stuff to like their experience of church, right? Well, in the church, you confess this, okay, and the things that I'm writing to you are ways that you act out the things that you confess. You're acting in accordance with, or you're acting in line with your confession. Okay, so I think it's part of what's happening here. Let's read a little bit further because I do want to check this. I want to pick up this next paragraph, even though we've referenced it here before. I want to make sure and pick it up before we leave 1 Timothy, and we're done with 1 Timothy after today. We're not going to come back to it, but I want to. I want to pick that up, and maybe if we can, maybe a few verses of the very end of the book. But that's kind of asking a lot.
Let's do it. We got
A few
7 minutes.
Let's do it. Okay, so let's read the first few verses of chapter 4.
Okay.
In 1 Timothy. Now the Spirit expressly says that in later times some will renounce the faith by paying attention to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons, through the hypocrisy of liars whose consciences are seared with a hot iron. They forbid marriage and demand abstinence from foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. For everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected, provided it is received with thanksgiving, for it is sanctified by God's word and by prayer. I want to pick up these things in the context. This is part of why I wanted to read that last section of chapter 3 too, because I think it gives us context to this, which I know we didn't read when we hurriedly referenced it the other time that we came to it. We were in some other book and we came to this verse to kind of illustrate something I think is what we did.
I vaguely remember this.
Yeah. And so, but notice there's several connections here, right? Like one is that he is talking about certain kind of behaviors in the church that are appropriate for the church. When he comes into chapter, and that's in chapter 3, right? Like I'm telling you so that you'll know how to behave in the household of God. Chapter 3. In chapter 4, he says there are these other opposing forces, opposing teachings. Okay. The teachings of demons and people that are saying these things.
That's harsh words.
Yeah, the hypocrisy of liars whose consciences are seared with a hot iron.
I remember that.
I remember we talked about this, right? And then he said, but notice what they're offering. They forbid marriage, demand abstinence from food. Okay, well, these are a different set of behaviors.
Yeah,
they're different kinds of markers. So what Paul is offering is a certain set of behaviors, and and those are grounded in the truth of Jesus.
Yeah.
He says, right? Go ahead.
Can't you read like some of Paul's other letters and be like, well, Paul seems to like say not to get married. Like you think
that's
it's
really
people like
interesting,
listening
yeah.
to Paul and like misinterpreting what he's saying, maybe.
Well, let's say that what Paul, that's a great question, because in Romans, Paul himself, or in 1 Corinthians, let's say, in 1 Corinthians 7, Paul has to clarify what he thinks about marriage.
Yeah.
Okay? And one thing that you'll notice is anytime you start clarifying yourself, it's real easy to make yourself less understood than before.
Yep.
I'll leave you guys to leave it to your own discussion of 1 Corinthians, whether Paul is successful in bringing about more clarity or whether he introduces less, right? Paul has certain thoughts about marriage, himself. But at the same time, he definitely provides freedom for people too, right? I mean, he definitely like that's the problem with 1 Corinthians 7, that maybe where it feels a little ambiguous is that Paul is teaching wisdom, but also is very much respecting the freedom of the people that he's writing to.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's,
Yeah.
I think it's clear that he's trying to walk that line, just like he does about food in other places, right? And
Yeah.
in Romans
Well,
12.
I was going to say
yeah.
also, yes, there's certain places where he's like, if you're in this situation, you probably shouldn't eat this food.
Yeah, but he's like,
But it's fine because just because the other person.
but at the same time, don't let people talk bad about like what is
Yeah,
your freedom, right? Like he's like
Yeah.
he says both things. And he talks
He
about both
is
sides
trying
of
to
his
walk
mouth.
a thin line.
Because
Yeah.
he respects the freedom of people, right?
Yeah.
There are times when people prefer clarity over freedom. Okay? And Paul is talking about teachers who are trying to offer something that doesn't have that ambiguity to it, and they're forbidding these certain practices. And Paul says here in chapter 4, he says that those things should be received by those who believe and know the truth. Now, I know that we didn't emphasize that part before, but that anchors it to this conversation that we're having in chapter. Like, what truth? What truth is it? The truth about Jesus. People that have encountered the Jesus that is revealed in flesh and vindicated in spirit, all that stuff. They should be able to hold and receive things, receive things with thanksgiving. And in particular, okay, notice that like part of that revealed in flesh is kind of important, right? Like, so he's kind of leaning against perhaps people that want to push against like fleshly life,
Yeah.
okay?
He's reminding him Jesus was human too.
Which Paul has things to say about the flesh too in
Yeah.
other places, right? But here, Jesus is revealed in the flesh, okay?
Yeah.
And
Is that
I think
pushback against some of the theology that was going on in the day? I mean,
Yeah,
had
it's
that
possible.
happened yet where people
Yeah.
were like, Jesus was just like a spirit? floating
Yeah, I don't
around?"
know. I mean, I think it's very possible.
Isn't that a thing that was kinda
Yeah,
going
it's
on?
going to happen at some point. We don't know where in that process it is here in Timothy, but or in Ephesus at the time of Timothy.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think it was always a struggle. There's always this struggle to like have this kind of maybe pseudo spirituality that wants to not have anything to do with the flesh and blood and bone of the world, right? The actual physicality of the world. And I do think he's checking against that. And in response to that, he says this really remarkable bit about, and I think it really is core to the spirituality of Paul. And I think it influences things like those marriage conversations and the things that he talks about when he talks about like food and other things too. He says that these false teachers forbid marriage and demand abstinence from food, which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. For everything created by God is good. Nothing is to be rejected. This is like huge words, by the way, right? Like these are remarkable words. Nothing is to be rejected, provided it is received with thanksgiving, for it is sanctified by God's word and by prayer. Which is really something. So it's both about the creation of things by God and also the reception and the mode of how we receive things, right? Like we should be able to receive them with prayer, and receive them with thanksgiving, and receive, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I think I see what he's saying, and it's really like awesome, and it's like it's a big implication for a lot, but it can also, I feel like, be misused like really badly. Like this seems one of those verses that's like,
Yeah.
you have to do what I say because everything's good. God says everything's good, and as long as we receive it with thanksgiving, and then you
Yeah.
do something that's bad.
yeah, and it's really, it really is. It's extremely challenging. Like this is one of those texts that I've come back to over and over again, and I really think about what Paul means, and
or not even abuse, just like, if that's true, then is this thing that I want to do good, or is it, you always have to like, really think that through, because he can't mean like, everything God created, first of all, is everything created by God, not everything, but everything created by God. So you got to think, was this thing created by God, or is this like something from Satan, or I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also too, like this whole thing of like, what does it mean? What does something mean to be? What does it mean to receive it with thanksgiving? I mean, that's
That
his
too, yeah.
condition, But what does that really mean? And it doesn't mean, like, Paul does not mean do whatever feels good. Like,
Right.
that's certainly not in his theology. But there also is something about just receiving the things that God has made for our pleasure. I mean, I think that's part of this. Almost unavoidably. I mean, he has to mean something like that, right?
Yeah. Well,
And yet, he in other places offers, make sure that we, that we're sober-minded.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's
this reminds me of that verse, especially with marriage and food together, where he says the food is for stomach is for food and food is for the stomach
Yeah.
or whatever. Is that in Corinthians too, or is that
let's see.
we've talked about that before in
That may be
the
where we
nest
came up from.
in
it.
class. I
Yeah.
remember it's
Oh,
been
okay.
a while.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, this reminds me kind of that.
Yeah. There is, any rate, all that to say that this whole, I do think you're right. I think that is in 1 Corinthians, but I was trying to like index that in my head. This seems to me to be about a posture that Paul has towards the world, and it is, he is always and continually aware that God is the creator of everything, and that God has provided. God is a benevolent, providing God, okay? And the way that you live in response to that is not like stinginess,
Yeah.
and it's not like avoiding all the things that God has made. Like, there is a sense that in creation, God is our gracious host in creation, and we are here to receive the life and all the things that come with that.
Yeah, you have to take what he's saying here in context of everything else that he's been saying, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you really figure out,
Right.
work through what are the things that I'm receiving with Thanksgiving.
But it's just a
versus
different posture. Like, you're not in the world afraid of. You shouldn't be just afraid of.
enjoying yourself.
Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right, and especially in light of the opponents that Paul's talking.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to say one last thing here, and that is that it strikes me that Paul's opponents don't always, like, the false teachings that they teach are maybe not the ones that we would guess. Like, when I think of somebody who's a false teacher in our world, okay, like, I tend to think of somebody that's saying, like, anything goes, do whatever you want. Like, that's the kind of person that we accuse of false teaching.
Yeah.
But in, like, this scenario, like, it's actually the opposite,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like, they're the ones saying, you should be more religious about the things that you eat, You should be
Right.
so religious that you don't get married,
Yeah.
You don't. And Paul's going, oh, wait, that kind of like overindulging, like, your religion and making your religion like keep you away from the good things of life, that is the kind of thing that a hypocrite whose conscience has been seared with a hot iron.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that they say. That's a teaching of demons, he says.
Right.
Which seems to me is kind of backwards of the way that we would normally think of that. So, any rate,
There's not a lot of people going around saying that right now. I mean, I'm sure there is, but that doesn't seem like the major message that
yeah,
we're getting from
yeah,
the world or from.
isn't that funny? I mean,
yeah.
but it's kind of backwards, right? So,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, at any rate, everybody, thank you. I see Amy and Betty, and who else is in here? And Peggy,
Hey, y'all.
and RH, and Margie, and Pam, and thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
We're done, and we will come back next week. We'll talk about 2 Timothy.
Okay.
And in just a couple of weeks, we're going to be done.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So thank you all. Grace and peace, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye, guys.